Welcome to episode 93 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Bob, they say Virginia's for lovers. Someone needs to tell that to Austin Dillon because I'm sure he'll be fighting his way out of this state. A 2-week break, we're back with overtime finishes.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan Priest. Appreciate that. And it took Austin Dillon not one, but two future Hall of Famers to wreck this week to get the win. We also have Kyle Busch using scissors in the garage. Adam has some thoughts about that. It's just nice to be back on track. There's cars on track. NASCAR's back.
Flags in the air. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Ooh, let's go racing, boys.
Well, Dale Earnhardt had a famous saying in Bristol in the 90s. I meant to rattle his cage, not wreck him. Austin Dillon summoning the 3-car pull to reverse Dale Earnhardt in Richmond this weekend and meant to wreck him, not rattle Joey Logano's cage. What an interesting Sunday afternoon and night.
Austin Dillon came from not one, not two, not three, but 4 car lengths back and just sent it into the corner, absolutely punting Joey Logano. And then poor Denny Hamlin gets cleaned up. We're going to talk tires, Bob. We were literally getting ready to talk tires. And now, what is this?
Well, you're right. We were ready to talk tires after a 2-week Olympic break. NASCAR is back at Richmond Motor Speedway for a Richmond International Raceway. It's changed so many times. But anyway, we're back finally from an Olympic break here, and you finally think, okay, we've got a slow race, not a lot going on, no cautions outside of the stage breaks. Then Ryan Priest has his, back-to-back races now where he causes overtime for the field and just changes everything. We thought we were going to be talking Daniel Suarez maybe with the soft tire option, how he used his strategy, but no. Instead, we have it just seems like when NASCAR has a boring race ad, they find a way to get some kind of explosive media out of it. Go ahead. Austin Dillon. I guess we'll get into it, right?
This is certainly explosive media. I haven't seen that type of commitment to self-sabotage since the Taliban, to be dead honest with you. It was awful. It was atrocious. I mean, it made no sense to me. And it's kind of, I'm still mad. I'm sweatier than usual because of what I watched. That's not racing. That is exactly what people who do not watch this sport think NASCAR is. It's just a demolition derby to the finish line. It just pisses me off because this race was something so different until Austin Dillon just decided to absolutely Leroy Jenkins it into the corner. It ruined what would have otherwise been an awesome race to talk about.
I don't know if it was an awesome race. We'll get into that later. I did not think it was a great race by any means here, but I will give you that it changed the narrative completely on and flipped it upside down.
A race for the purists, at least. I mean, this was as far as pure racing goes, with no caution flags, other than, of course, the stages and stuff like that. That's why I say it was an awesome race. It just seemed like there was so much flow, strategy mattered, and then all of a sudden you just have one guy make a decision and take out 2 drivers. Mind you, Austin Dillon did have a good car, but you lost on the restart. I mean, I guess that's where we have to start, is kind of just how it all went with the restart. And ultimately as the lead car there, he had the opportunity to kind of really bring the race to pace, and he messed it up. I think the announcers kind of got to him because they discussed how he was 35th in restarts and gaining and losing positions in the field to this point. So he may have got a little bit of the announcer jinx, but at the end of the day, he just lost it.
Yeah, he lost it for sure. I think when they said he was going to start on the bottom and Joe Logano on the top, you thought, okay, well, that's an interesting call there. And Logano showed his veteran prowess. He's a multi-time Cup champion and really just kind of dogged him on the restart there. Took the outside lane and just cleared him by the second part of the first overtime lap there. And it caused Austin Dillon, even with a good turn 4 going into that white flag, he was still, like you said, 3-4 car lengths back heading into the backstretch there. And then you thought, okay, he's going to have to dive bomb to even get to his bumper. There's no way he's going to, he did it. Oh, he really truly lunged about a limo's length to that back bumper of that 22 car they're at. And I guess you kind of touched on it. It's exactly what people who don't follow NASCAR think it is. It's just beating and banging, wrecking each other. It's video game like wrecking at the end. That's what I would do in NASCAR heat when I'm down on the back of that. That's what you would do, especially in NASCAR heat, Ad. And I guess my thing is, it's because of what NASCAR has done. playoff implications. You have to win in order to make the playoffs now. If you finish second and Austin Dillon says, well, yeah, I came up short, he's going to be 30th second in the playoff standings. It's not going to do anything for him. Denny Hamlin mentioned it in the post-race thing where, I don't like it, but the record book's not going to say anything about this ending. But we're going to, because that's what we do here. We break down the race. And so I've got a lot to say here. But before I do, because I'm going to try and keep it a little bit professional. It's been a long day. But just go ahead and give me your thoughts first.
I mean, I'm not going to say much that you haven't kind of touched on already, but it just gets to a point where I was looking at it and it felt like I was watching one of those TikToks where, I can't remember his right now. And, let me know in the comments. The guy who just intentionally wrecks people on iRacing and just puts it all over social media. That was the type of thing that you expect to see in those TikToks. I just can't believe that actually just happened in a race, like a points race, coming off of a 2-week break. We waited 2 weeks for NASCAR, and then you just get an ending that it's just like, it just feels gross. I mean, yeah, Austin Dillon won the race, but how do you feel good about that at all? And you could kind of tell by his post-race interview, he doesn't, and he shouldn't. And that's kind of where I'm at. There has to be a mutual respect among the drivers, among the people on the track, because when you're driving that fast and when you're constantly moving at over, 150 miles an hour, a little bit slower at Richmond because it's a short track, but you've got a select group of guys at the Cup level who all have to trust each other. And if you're Austin Dillon, yeah, you won the race, but think about what it actually costed you. Because I don't think there's a driver in the garage right now, even the most aggressive driver, is looking at this and saying, this wasn't it. This isn't what our sport is supposed to be. It's not at all, the way that you want to win races. So, okay, I get it. The NASCAR playoff picture and the playoff, the chase to the playoffs and everything, it really incentivizes this, but you kind of got to take a look in the mirror if you're Austin Dillon and if you're NASCAR, because if this is the type of stuff that they're incentivizing with their playoff picture, you kind of you gotta think about doing something about it, because if you and I can't find a positive thing to say about this, we're pretty solid at carrying water for NASCAR from time to time. This was just atrocious. I have no words for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you had a lot of words for it there. I guess I'll touch back on your NASCAR and the playoff thing here in a second here, but I had some thoughts before we got into that there. My biggest thing is yeah, like you said, the racing for the win there, you can't be thrilled about it. Austin Dillon was definitely lackluster in his celebration there. I don't know if I like it or not. And all the drivers, I know Tyler Reddick is Denny Hamlin's teammate. He's his boss, all that, the synergy there. But you could just tell all the drivers were not thrilled at how that was done, because imagine if the roles were reversed and it was Denny Hamlin doing that to Austin Dillon. Richard Childress would have personally come down from the grandstands and thrown punches at Denny Hamlin in victory lane. There's no doubt in my mind about that. The way it happened, I get it. It's the playoffs and all that. What do you do if you're NASCAR, though? You can't do anything, Ad. I mean, you can't give a penalty there. What are you going to do? Reverse the decision, give Denny Hamlin second? I think he ended up P2 there at the end. You going to stop it when Logano got spun originally? It's just, it sucks. But really, more than anything, the 3-team forced NASCAR's hand. This is for the win. We're not going to do anything about it. You're not going to do anything about it. And we're going to the playoffs. And guess what? I guarantee you by Wednesday, that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be no suspensions, even though right rearing somebody on the front stretch historically has been a suspension. I don't know what we're talking about here, but no, instead that's just racing for the win. Again, as a fan, I'm watching it, even just dissecting it 45 minutes later, and I'm just disappointed as a fan at how that turned out. Because like I said, it wasn't a great race by any means, but you can't end like that. That's a clown show.
No, that is an absolute clown show. You're 100% right. And it just gets to a point where you're like, what are we doing? And it just pisses me off, because you're 100% right. What do you do? And there's nothing to do about this, because two wrongs don't make a right in this situation. But
Ad, there's literally audio. I mean, when they came across the checkered flag, Austin Dillon's team, there's a Jeff Gluck tweet out. I'll read it right now. Austin Dillon's team radio right before they came on the backstretch. I don't care how you do it before he hit Joe Logano. And then, quote, wreck him before Denny Hamlin. Then when they got to the checkered flag, quote, Pop is proud of you, Richard Childress told his grandson, Austin Dillon. Listen, I just don't understand how you can celebrate this from an RCR perspective. I get you're in the playoffs. It's huge for them. Jumping up 20 point spots, like Denny Hamlin said, you're in the playoffs, but that's just it's just bad. I really want to keep it professional, but it's just really bad.
Austin Dillon had a good car today, and that's going to be completely overshadowed because it was just such a shit move at the end that we're going to completely forget about how hard he had to lean on Denny Hamlin and really work for a few laps to get around him to take first place. And then all of a sudden, with one boneheaded overtime move, the narrative completely flips on Austin Dillon. I mean, Joey Logano went as far to say he's terrible. He's been terrible his entire career. I mean, if you're Austin Dillon, like I said, earlier, sure, you won the race, but at what cost? And I think that's kind of the question that we're going to see answered in the coming weeks going into the playoffs and, probably years down the line, to be honest with you, is we're going to see what this type of move actually costs Austin Dillon. Because you may have made Pop happy, and that's all fine and dandy because at the end of the day, that's who's signing your checks. But there's a lot of other people in this sport who are not named Pop who are going to be very pissed off at what you just did.
100%. And maybe a year from now we forget about this like it didn't even happen, but it just feels like the way with two drivers that are very persuasive and have a huge voice in the garage, two guys. Denny Hamlin is a guy who's always been a playoff contender, and Joey Logano, like I said, two-time playoff champion. These are guys that have a lot of sway in that garage, a lot of veteran leadership, and to tick off some guys like that when you're a guy who has been allegedly kind of a foot out the door, potentially taking a management role at RCR. He said he's going to sign he has signed a contract extension, so he will be there for the future in that 3 car. But there's been smoke and uncertainty around him this year, just the way he's performed. This is his first top 5 finish in 50 races. You go back to when he won that Coke 0400 at Daytona, the 2021 regular season finale there, where I think 9 cars finished on the lead lap because the rest of the field wrecked out when the rain hit in the middle of the race. And Austin Dillon got pushed by his teammate Tyler Reddick because Dillon needed the win, and Reddick was told by Pop, push my grandson to the checkered flag. It's just like you said, it's tough to take this serious. And what will it do for Austin Dillon's reputation moving forward? It's interesting to see.
And that's the thing. You're sure Austin Dillon has won 2 races in recent years, but you hit the nail on the head. One was because he got very lucky in navigating that wreck, in the Coke 400 or the Coke 0400. I apologize. We got to take the sugar out of that one. And then today, whatever the heck you want to call this calamity, I guess it's the run, bump, and run. I guess because he had to run to get there, bump him when he got there, and then keep going. And then, I mean, that's just the Joey Logano part of this wreck. I mean, then there's poor Denny Hamlin, who, stop me if you've heard this before, but Denny Hamlin got right rear hooked.
Yeah, it's tough. And like I said, I think it should potentially be at least looked at as a penalty or some kind of suspension, just because the precedence is there where right rearing someone at full speed or trying to wreck someone intentionally historically has been some kind of reprimand from NASCAR. I don't think they're going to do anything though, because like I said, they forced NASCAR's hand because of the playoff must-win scenario format they've created. This is the bed you got to lay in because you've made it. Now you got to lie in it, Ad. With that said, though, I mean, the ripple effect from this is huge because of the playoff implications. If a Logano or a Hamlin wins today, okay, we're moving on to Michigan next week. There's 4 guys still. The playoff cutoff line is interesting. You got Buescher, Chastain, Bubba Wallace there. With Truex's DNF we'll get into later, he's now in a little bit more of a sweaty spot. But now you have a wild card, and I mean a wild card, at 100-1 odds in Vegas today winning in Austin Dillon. That just changes everything now. And let's go ahead and just look at the playoff picture, Ad. I guess we'll start with Bubba Wallace and maybe Ross Chastain, because they're guys that at least had somewhat of a good day today with 4th and 5th, as much as it can be with a wild card winning like that today.
Yeah, 100%. And, obviously not the person they wanted to see in victory lane if you're Bubba Wallace or Ross Chastain, but I think I'll start with Bubba Wallace. Bubba deserves a ton of credit for just what he's been able to piece together before the Olympic break and then now coming out of the Olympic break to, obviously to end up in the top 5 today and to really kind of, I don't think he was outside of the top 10 at all today. I mean, maybe just for, a millisecond.
Well, that's because the passing wasn't very much on track. But anyway.
Yeah, but regardless, I mean, to put himself, to keep himself there in the, with all of the different things going on with the option tire and different things like that. And historically, this isn't, you don't often look at Richmond and say, oh, Bubba Wallace is going to dominate here. So for him to carry the momentum that he had for the 2 weeks going into Michigan, a track where he has had success, I don't know. It just feels like that 23 car may be building something. As far as Ross Chastain goes, though, Bob, it just has felt so quiet from the one car. And, obviously Daniel Suarez made waves today with strategy. He's won a race. I don't know when Ross is going to come into his own and be his old self, but it feels like we're headed for something, especially with him this close to the playoff line.
I will say a quiet top 5 today for Ross Chastain and a finish where it's explosive. You heard his post-race interview, so I'm just glad I wasn't involved in the antics today. I do love the cheekiness from Chastain there. I'm with you, though. You have Chastain, who I believe is 3 points out of the cut line right now. Bubba Wallace, though, 3 points in now. He's 3 points good as the last car in the NASCAR playoffs right now. And that's because of the last few weeks where, there was a time he was 20, 30 points out of the playoffs. And even when the playoff grid has been bumped up on that cut line, Bubba Wallace has been stringing together these top 5, top 10 runs to end this summer break here, Ad. And to keep that momentum up this week, that's absolutely huge. Because it's an absolute dogfight as far as who's in the playoff standings right now. Ty Gibbs was over 40 points to the good today. He leaves Richmond 19 points ahead of the cut line. And a guy we should focus in on before we get into Martin Truex's antics here, Ad, was a guy who won the race last year. Okay? Chris Buescher won the Richmond race last year, the fall race. And now he comes out there and has issues on pit road, just didn't really have the speed that he showed last year. And the playoff cut line is so tight now where mistakes like that on pit road are going to start biting you at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess somebody needed to remind Chris Buescher where his pit box was today, because not only was it important for this race, it was important for your playoff picture, my guy. It was almost like if Chris Buescher fans could have somehow force pushed his car through the TV to stop in that pit box, they would have, because it seemed like he was headed for, putting himself in a little bit of a better position. Now he finds himself 3 points behind Bubba Wallace in the playoff picture and, kind of behind the cut line. I hate to say that this feels like it's over for Chris Buescher, but that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting off of this whole, that mistake felt fatal. And I don't know if that's just me, kind of jumping to conclusions and a snap judgment, but I'll say watching what happened on pit road, that felt fatal today.
No, I don't think that's fatal. I think that's an overreaction. He's only 3 points out, Ad. That 3 points out. He won the Michigan race last year. He's going back to the race he won last year. He went back to back. Listen, all it takes is one bad DNF like a Martin Truex today where he had an engine blow up to be right back in that spot where he's in the playoff cut line picture. A Bubba Wallace wreck, a Ty Gibbs wreck. All it takes is one of those Toyotas to have a slip up, and Chris Buescher's in the playoffs. No, I gotta say I'm not worried yet. I'm concerned, but I'm not just full on panic, because at this point, anyone who's in that playoff grid cutoff line, whether it's Truex all the way down to Chastain, I think at this point you can kind of rule out Chase Briscoe 103 out. He's must win territory. At this point, it's those guys from Truex to Chastain. All those guys are sweating, but not just completely petrified yet. Now, if we have another winner, okay, yeah, all hands on deck. We'll see. But let's get into the Martin Truex thing, because a DNF last place finish at his last ever Richmond race at a track where he's had success at. I hate to say it, something in my throat here. Bob is right. The Toyota engines are a ticking time bomb. I've been telling y'all for weeks on this podcast, ever since Denny Hamlin blew up at Sonoma. I've been saying there's something wrong with these engines, because you don't see engine failures at this rate at NASCAR with this next-gen car, Ad. And now another Toyota strikes. Another one. I'm not crazy.
If you have the tinfoil hat on, make sure you turn that into just a solid rock or, solid ball, because you've got business to stand on, Bob. You went with your gut early, and I've never been prouder as a co-host. You're right. There's something going on at Toyota. I'm not sure if it's on the engineering side or what the heck is going on, if it's adjustments that they're making when they go to the track. But it just seems like, Martin said it himself, it just felt like the engine kind of sputtered and then just never really, was able to get back up to power. And I don't know, Bob, especially headed for the playoffs, it would be a damn shame if they keep having these types of issues.
And Richmond's a short track. Where do we go in the playoffs? Martinsville, Phoenix, those are very key races when it comes down to it. Bristol is a very early cutoff race in the round of 16 ad. Short tracks, you've got to be clutch at them. This is now another short track. Toyota has blown an engine at Christopher Bell, limped home at Gateway in that very flat oval track. Listen, I said it, I think, a couple weeks ago, Ad, with the Ty Gibbs thing. It's going to come back and bite one of these guys in the playoffs. It's going to. One of these engines is going to give out at a time when there's absolutely no margin for error. And I think, if it happened 2 or 3 times, you go, okay, maybe it's just a weird coincidence now. But Ad, especially back-to-back weeks now, I just, or 2 out of the 3 weeks, I guess, with Ty Gibbs at Pocono, I just really think that there's something fishy about this. But anyway, let's get back into the actual race here before we go into conspiracy world, because we've got a lot to talk about on the conspiracies if we really wanted to. There was no other cautions today besides Ryan Preece's gift in overtime for the rest of the field there to make it interesting. I guess we'll start with the tires, because that was really what the main topic of this show was going to be, was NASCAR introducing the soft option tire. They did it the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, though, it did not make a difference in that race. Tonight at Richmond, Daniel Suarez was almost 2 seconds faster than the leaders at one point in stage, I think 1 or 2. I mean, what were our overall thoughts tonight on this? Was it a success? Was it, what do you think?
It was definitely interesting. I think it adds another wrinkle. Obviously, anytime you give the crew chiefs, more things to play with or different strategies and things like that, I think, it obviously makes things a bit more interesting. I'll say this, when Suarez put him on, I texted you and said, did NASCAR get pushed to pass, or what the heck's going on here? Because it made all the difference in the world for Daniel Suarez. And, you got to give a ton of credit to the 99 team for just going to those soft option tires when nobody else was on them. Because that was when you were going to see the biggest dividend get paid. And ultimately, that's what happened for Daniel Suarez. I believe he started 21st or somewhere like that, and then was able to, because of those tires and because of making that bold move early, he was able to get track position, put himself in a really good spot for the remainder of the race, and keep himself there and get himself a way better finish that he ever could have dreamed of starting as far back as he did. So I like it on that, to where it gives guys options, even if, you want parity, especially with this next gen car. This is a way to do it. Do I think it's like, okay, now every single track that we go to, we need an option tire? Absolutely not. But they had to do something with the short track package, and this was certainly put in the column of something. And it worked. I think ultimately it worked, because for some people more than others, depending on how risky you were with it, but ultimately, I like giving the crew chiefs and the teams more options, because it puts it more in their hands. And from that standpoint, I really like it. What about you?
I'm with you. They're at least taking a swing at fixing these short track packages. With the 2025 schedule leak coming out, it kind of leaked last week. There's, I think, 4 short tracks in the playoffs for next year in 2025. And this next gen car hasn't been good on these tracks here, so at least they're trying anything. They're throwing the kitchen sink at this. Goodyear's saying, hey, we'll make a soft tire, and at least add today, for Richmond, historically, it's a boring track. They might lose a date next year. They might be just down to 1 race next year at a historical track that, when you think back to like the Chevy Rock and Roll 400 in the 2000s, this was a must-see race at night. It was must-see. And now it goes out with a whimper because they can't pass. But at least with this soft option tire, you saw guys be able to charge up to the front. You saw Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell take that early swing and say, we're going to put one of our soft tires out there, and we're going to see if we can get some track position. For Daniel Suarez, he ended up P10. If there was no overtime restart he finishes top 5 there. Almost 1 second stage. If you really told Daniel Suarez that coming into the race, he'd be like, oh, I'm taking that every single day. And that's because they tried something different and were rewarded with it. Listen, like you said, is it going to work at every track? No, 100%. But with Richmond, it couldn't have gotten any worse. The racing has been awful the last few years, so it can't be any worse. At least this was something.
No, I agree with that. 100%. And ultimately, if there was ever a track where you were going to put a soft tire on it and have it get eaten up, it's Richmond, because like you said, some call it historic, some call it older, and it's an older racing surface, and it's a racing surface that eats tires. So make a soft tire that is actually going to get ate up by the asphalt that you've got laid down on the track. I liked it. I thought it was kind of the perfect storm because of the age of the racing surface, the softness of the tire. It was kind of the first time that, any team had seen this in a points race. So nobody really necessarily knew what everybody was going to do. I think, the longer this option tire sticks around and the more frequently we see it, I think the more people get a grasp on it and actually, understand what the best strategy is for it today. But obviously, a ton of kudos has to go to the 99 team today, because they were one of the only teams who played it completely right in my book.
100%. And let's kind of transition here. Let's look at the results overall today, the finishing order, because there was a lot to get to. Let's kind of zoom through this, though. One that jumps out to me is Carson Hocevar in 8th place. And listen, Corey LaJoie still no top 10s on non-super speedways when Carson Hocevar in his rookie year running top 10 and finishing 8th place. That's huge. Christopher Bell finished 6th today. He had arguably the fastest car on the entire track today, but had a pit road penalty in stage 3 that completely derailed his race. That was a tough one.
Yeah, that was just a heartbreaker for Christopher Bell. It feels like that happens to him more frequently than you would ever, care to watch a driver that you enjoy have that happen. So if you're a Christopher Bell fan out there, I apologize, but yeah, tough go for him. We talked about Bubba Wallace getting the 4th place finish. His 2311 teammate Tyler Reddick finishing in 3rd after all of the chaos. I thought, honestly, one of the funnier quotes of the day was they asked Alan Gustafson, how's Chase feeling? What's Chase going to end up doing today? And his quote was something to the effect of, we could either win this race or we'll finish somewhere around 15th, and I have no idea which one of it it's going to be. And ends up finishing 10th.
I mean, he was pretty close there. I mean, those Hendrick cars were pretty average today. Kyle Larson was never a factor at a track where he's been decent at historically in his career. A guy I want to highlight there is Ty Gibbs in 22nd. We mentioned him in the playoff order. It was 40 points good coming in, now only 19. Just a lackluster day where Toyotas really did seem to have the best manufacturer speed overall. Ty Gibbs never showed that in 22nd overall today. I guess we could talk about Harrison Burton. There's our weekly mention, 32nd there, Ad. Who else jumps out to you that kind of jumps out on this overall finish in here?
Justin Haley, 27th, womp womp. Very sad. We're gonna be sad about that. As a podcast, we're gonna be sad about that.
He might be just having his eyes focused on his next ride next year. Oh, stay tuned to the podcast and the YouTube channel. I might be putting something out next week on where Justin Haley's going. Oh, you're going to like it if you're a Justin Haley fan. I'm excited. Let's just say it's going to be a joy to watch Justin Haley in a car next year. Anyway, Ad, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know how you expect me to follow up a tease like that one, as we call it in the biz, but no, I think honestly no real surprises kind of looking at the finishing order, other than of course the glaring one and the one position with Austin Dillon. But other than that, I mean, no real surprises here for me. I think the one that kind of makes me sad is Josh Berry. But other than that, no surprises.
Did you really have to mention Austin Dillon? It'd been like 15 minutes. I had finally calmed down a little bit, dude. Come on, man. Pop's happy. I'm glad Pop's happy. At least he's just thrilled tonight. I hope that the Childress Vineyard gets a lot of business tomorrow. I hope they're pouring wine out the glass tomorrow. You did mention, though, or I guess I mentioned in the teaser here, but you texted me, and I still don't know exactly what this is going to be here. Kyle Busch had an incident at the Indy race before the Olympic break where he looked like he had gotten that steering jack and jacked up his wrist, maybe sprained it, broke it. We weren't sure. You saw him in a brace over the break on an Instagram post with his wife that was deleted afterwards, very quickly after they realized what they had done. But Kyle Busch did confirm before the race weekend got going at Richmond that he did sprain his wrist, some kind of wrist injury. He said it was bad enough, though, that he would not have raced the next week if there was a NASCAR race. So thank goodness for the Olympic break, keeping Kyle Busch's season alive. No waiver needed there. Oh, God, I said the word waiver. Sorry, people. Sorry. Stay with me here. Anyway, you have Kyle Busch wearing a brace in this race. He's got the football lineman tape. I used to wear it when I broke my hand in football. Kyle Busch had scissors in the car, though. They showed him trying to cut it off, I guess, mid-race. I am no smart man, I'm not even claiming to be an average intelligence man, but I know not to drive and play with scissors. So listen, if you've got anything to go ahead and tease me on what you've got to say, by now, the floor is yours.
I'll say this. Kyle Busch learned a lesson that a lot of us former athletes like Bob and myself, we will be in the same category for this, Bob.
I don't know if we're the same tier, but thank you. I appreciate getting lumped in with you.
I'm a dwarf amongst midgets, if anything. We'll call it that. So here's my thing. Anybody who watches the NFL and sees all these guys taped up and everything, especially as a kid, as a young athlete, you think to yourself, man, the day that I have access to an athletic trainer to wrap me and everything, I am going to get every single piece of tape I can on my body anywhere.
Oh, that's so real. Fuck, that's true. Okay, good point. Yep. Okay, I'm with you.
But then, Kyle Busch learned the same lesson that all of us did. As cool as wrist tape looks, my God, is it uncomfortable if it's not done correctly.
Did you have the shark? Did you have the shark in the locker room? The shark that ripped off the tape?
Yeah, the shark. Yeah, I was going to say. But that was actually that was going to be my second point. It's one thing to rip, it's one thing to have the shark and get it ripped off. My man just went with not even kitchen scissors. We're talking just regular school supplies like people are buying to send their kids back to school, and he's just cutting at this thing. And I'm like, dude, while you're driving, my mom said not to run with scissors as a kid. I certainly believe that she would say not to drive with scissors, because it was just such a funny image. Obviously, he was hurt and needed the tape, but it kind of gave me the same vibes as Ricky Bobby just hacksawing his cast off in the middle of the movie to make sure that he could race. But, pin rack steering claims another wrist. You feel bad for Kyle Busch, but man, oh man, it was kind of hilarious to watch him cut that tape off, because I think any young athlete who's ever thought, oh, I'm going to get everything taped and do this and that, has been in that situation where you're like, well, shit, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, no, that was a lot more real than I thought it was going to be. I had no idea where we're going with that. That is very true. I definitely would say if I had to try and do that driving, and I think he was coming off of the pit road or his pit box there, so like there's a lot going on there. You got to be quick and nimble. I would have cut a finger off probably, if not two. I would definitely look like Jason Pierre-Paul after the Richmond race there. So listen, the fact that Kyle Busch had the wherewithal and just the IQ to go ahead and get that out of there, and it finally cut it completely off, it looked like there. I guess it was just giving him a lot of pain there, but that was pretty good. I'm impressed.
Let me ask this, though. What can or cannot be handed into the car? Like, what can your pit crew hand to your driver? Because that's got to, like, I don't know if NASCAR, if he's going to get, I don't know if he's going to get any discipline for that, but ultimately, that was something that I kind of thought about, was like, all right, this feels kind of weird. They're handing him something he's going to have in the car while he's driving, and I don't know. I don't know if it's my lawyer or what it is.
NASCAR had a race car driver with a monkey in it at one point in the 60s. So listen, I don't think scissors even gets close to the weirdest things that a driver has had in his car. Okay, I think his name was Bobo the monkey. R.I.P. to Bobo. But yeah, listen, scissors is weird, but I don't think it even gets close to the weirdest things. Dick Trickle was smoking cigs at one point in the car.
But that's what I'm saying, is what is there a rule? I don't even know. It was literally like, there was every part of my lawyer mind was like, is this, like, from an insurance perspective, are we okay with him driving that quickly with blades in the car? Just a thought. Just a thought.
Morgan & Morgan sponsors RCR. I see all those advertisements all the time. If they need a lawyer, they've got one on the team there.
He's got plaintiff's attorneys, so you gotta be careful. He would need a defense attorney. So if you need me, RCR, go ahead and give me a call. I'll do the appeal for free, pro bono.
Pro bono. Adam O'Shea, a lawyer. He mentions it at least once a podcast, folks. If you didn't know what he does for a living, there he is a lawyer. He went to law school. Yes. He paid enough money. He wants you to know what he did.
I got a Juris Doctorate, and I suffered through it, so you guys all have to hear about it. It's a personality trait.
Yeah, he's got a Juris Doctorate, and he's still making YouTube videos, folks. What does that tell you about him? Oh, you're just like me, plebe. You're just like me. On a serious note, we're over half an hour into this podcast, and Jesus, if you're so far into this podcast and you haven't gotten fumed because of the antics of RCR and and Austin Dillon, or somehow Adam and I haven't pushed you away this far in with our banter. Thank you so much for listening. We do this podcast on a weekly basis. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We'll keep you updated on all the motorsports news here, Ad. And goodness gracious, as we go to Michigan next week, I can't even fathom having an ending like that there. But if anyone right rears somebody on the front stretch at Michigan at that 2-mile oval, they're going to get suspended. I'm going to go ahead and do a hot take on this one.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that's a pretty safe bet at this point. But I love Michigan. It's a 2-mile oval. I never forget what they took from me out here on the West Coast with the Auto Club going away. I'll mention it. There was a D-shaped short track rendering that came out of the Auto Club. So West Coast race fans, hold your breath. Make sure you hold your breath. Really make sure you hold your breath while they're building this one. I'm sure that won't get that'll definitely happen, right, Bob?
Oh, I'm sure. But yeah, you're right. Michigan fun track, 2-mile oval, a lot of speeds there. It's a big race for GM and Ford being home tracks up there. Brad Keselowski's always said one of his bucket list items was winning at his hometown or his home state track at Michigan. Has never been able to do it. Is this the year Brad finally gets that Michigan win? It's almost as big as like the Daytona 500 to him, but listen, can't wait to see. We're finally back. No more Olympics. The Olympics were great. USA dominated the world. Sorry, world. We did a motorsports Olympic video a couple weeks ago. The U.S. didn't at least win that, so we're at least pro bono here at the podcast.
I don't want to hear shit about medals per capita, you losers. The rest of you losers. I don't want to hear it. USA #1 again. Smell ya.
Well, there you go, folks. This has been episode 93 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Thank you so much to Austin Dillon for giving us more to talk about other than tires. We will be back next week for Michigan Ad. Send us home, brother.
Ty Dillon finished 26th today.